honor the transition that you're experiencing from being somebody who wasn't a mom to becoming a mom. Because there is a transition, and I do think we need to, that is something everybody should be honest with themselves about. But it's really difficult to honor that transition when we're in a pandemic and there were restrictions the way that there were. Like, I've been given free content and free shit for years, but now I'm in a space where it's like, I have to prioritize my nurturing for my baby. It feels as though there's just this emphasis on consumption, and I'm not here to be consumed. I'm a person. Hi, this is Emilia Ortiz, and you are tuning in to Dreams and Drive.
Hey, Dream Drivers, welcome to episode 278. I am super excited for us to be chatting with today's guest, Emilia Ortiz. Emilia is somebody who has always caught my attention online. She's someone I've been following for a few years. I had the pleasure of interviewing her for XO Nicole a few years ago. And like me, Emilia is a first-time mom, pandemic mom, and I wanted to focus in a few episodes every few weeks about what it's like to be a pandemic mom, what it's like to be a first-time mother, because this is something I've personally been struggling with or navigating through, I should say. And Emilia is somebody who online has really been transparent and vulnerable about the realities of her experience as a new mother. So I thought she was somebody who would be perfect to get this conversation going about what it means to be a mom, what it means to be a dream driver, what it means to be a nurturer, what it means to really, really hone in on who you are during this new part of your life. A little bit more about Emilia. She's a Bruja and energetic healer from Brooklyn, New York. She works one-on-one with clients, leading workshops and offering educational, uplifting content to her audience on social media. I love her reels. I love her content. I love her New York flavor, her New York flair. You'll definitely hear it once we get started. And she focuses in on spirituality, mental health, and cannabis advocacy. So she's somebody whose story is unique, who really is honest about who she is, where she's come from, and where she wants to go. And now adding in motherhood, I think her perspective and her reflection is one that we all can really learn from. So thank you, Emilia, for coming in on the show today and for sharing your story. Remember, guys, if you enjoy this episode, if this is your first time listening, please make sure that you're sharing this, post it to your Instagram stories, post it to your Facebook page, tag us. We are Dreams and Drive across the board on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and you can use the hashtag Dreams and Drive when sharing as well. And let me know what you guys think about this series and about me focusing in on other pandemic moms. I think that we need to have this conversation. We need to hold space for us to just reflect on what it's really like for us. So thank you for tuning in. Let's hear from Emilia.
Hey, Vena. Thank you so much for having me.
I am super excited to have you on the show. I remember, so let me tell the audience about how I first heard about Emilia Ortiz. So I was a writer for XO Nicole a few years ago, and I was given the story to feature like wellness influencers. And we had like a very short interview a few years ago where you gave me some of your wellness tips or self-care tips. And you were just on my radar since then. I've been following you, love your messaging. And then also, when you found out you were pregnant and you shared that part of your journey, I tuned in because I also was a pandemic mother experiencing pregnancy and being, the whole postpartum experience during a global pandemic. So I had to have you on the show to just talk about life and how these babies are really shaping us.
Yeah, no, for sure. And it's so funny. I appreciate that, you have tuned in to everything I've been putting out, since our first encounter, if you want to call it that, since everything is, especially since everything is so virtual, so I really appreciate you tuning in for that. And also with, you connecting to my own pregnancy journey. I know that for a lot of pandemic moms, it's been kind of difficult to find pregnancy stories that we can connect and relate to because it really is so different,
It really is. And the part about connecting and relating to is something that I think is so important because there are a lot of pregnant moms on Instagram and social media, right? But finding somebody that looks like you, that speaks like you, that understands the culture, understands how things can be different for, women of color is definitely is definitely, I think, so important because pregnancy can be isolating within itself. And I think during the pandemic, a lot of us went online to try to find these virtual spaces that we felt seen or heard or felt part of. So you were definitely somebody for me that just seeing that you also were keeping it real. Because look, your Instagram name is Either Real, right?
Yeah, it's a double entendre. Yeah, either real or ethereal, either one. But definitely, that's why it's funny. That's why I kept it, 100 with my whole pregnancy journey. And I was very honest and transparent with a lot of what I was experiencing because I felt like, especially as somebody who has such a large following, I find that a lot of the time, people who have large followings, when they share their pregnancy experiences, for the most part, obviously this is not going to be true for, every single one, but for the most part, it's like this very dreamlike version, right? They don't talk about the morning sickness, or if they do, they're like, oh, I didn't have that, or it wasn't too bad, or, they don't have heartburn, or just all these things where we're like, wow, that pregnancy sounds like a dream. And, just there's also a lot of talking about how they're being supported and how they've been seeing their friends and this and that. But in the pandemic, that was not really something that a lot of us had access to or could do and actually feel safe doing so. And I think also a lot of us, since we were so isolated and limited when it comes to activity, I think that also greatly impacted the symptoms that we were experiencing during our pregnancy, from emotional to physical. So that's why I wanted to be honest about my journey because, especially being somebody in the wellness space, again, I think a lot of the time, those pages can be ones that feed everybody, like I said, this kind of dream-like experience that is not really relatable for everybody, and can kind of make you feel like, wow, so am I doing shit wrong? Like, why am I eating stuff I shouldn't eat? Like, what am I doing?
And especially, I think what also compounds everything is you being a first-time mother, right? Because I think let's say for other women who this may be in their second, third, whatever pregnancy, they at least have something to compare it to. But for us, it's like we were, I don't want to say shell-shocked, right? But it really, it really was different for, I think, first-time moms specifically. I don't want to compare. I've never been, this is my first time having a baby. So I don't want to discount anyone else's experience. I'm just saying, I do think that for these first-time moms like ourselves, it really showed you. And at the same time, I think it brought out a strength within us in a weird way. And we'll talk about that a little bit later, but it showed you what you are capable of. And I know for me, it gave me a strength that I didn't even know I had. I think motherhood in general gives you a strength you didn't even know you had. But
no, for sure.
But, I love to start our interviews. And I hope this comes back full circle for us, right? Now that we have kids, I think it's very important to think back about who we were as children, right? What do you think what was inspiring you as a child growing up in Brooklyn, New York, right? What was the world like through your eyes?
Wow. Well, first off, I can say it was very different than it is now. Especially due to, gentrification. It was very different than it is now. But, and it's going to sound kind of probably a little corny, but a lot of what inspired me was not just my own mom, but the moms that I encountered on a regular basis, right? The moms of my friends, the moms who worked in my school, right? Or in my after school program or in my daycare center. Like, these women were just such a source of inspiration. There is a hustle in women, whether, you're from Brooklyn or you're living in Brooklyn, there becomes this thing where you embody the hustle. Right. And you embody it in a way that not only is to provide and do what you got to do, but also in a way that helps you to like be an individual in that. You know what I'm saying? And I know that sounds like a little strange for some people, right? Because a lot of us can lose ourselves in the hustle. But I found that the women who I, grew up around, they were able to still affirm their own identity in that. And that was really inspiring for me to see all these really strong, beautiful, and also tender at the same time, women, you know, doing what they got to do, providing, you know, and not just providing financially and having jobs and being working women in a sense, but also being women who took pride in their style, you know what I mean? And who made a conscious effort to be loving and tender despite living in a borough in particular that, you know, was not necessarily, you know, I know there's that whole saying, you know, from Biggie, spread love is the Brooklyn way, you know, and that's true, but there is also a part of Brooklyn being rough around the edges, you know, and still these women found a way to still embody softness and tenderness despite that. And for me as a child, that was truly inspiring, you know, especially as a woman now, looking back. So often, you know, we as women of color are forced to tuck away our softness, right? And our tenderness and only show up as strong. And, you know, I was able to kind of take in and understand that that was something that was that was kind of expected of women of color, you know, even as a little girl. But to see the duality, that was so inspiring for me as a child. And it's something I look back on now as an adult too.
You know, looking back too, did you have a dream as a kid? Was there something that you were so sure, you know, 30-year-old Emilia was going to be this, that, and this?
I can't help but laugh because I think everybody's going to laugh at me. But just like, you know, a lot of kids, I wanted to be a vet so badly. I wanted to be a veterinarian so badly.
Look, it goes into the caring, right? Because when you're caring for animals, you have to be tender, you have to be compassionate, and it takes. I'm not saying that I'm not an animal person. I'm not saying like I don't like animals. I mean, I like them, but I don't like them like them.
Yeah.
To have this compassion for like another species, right, and want to nurse an animal back to health. That says a lot about you.
Yeah, it definitely ties into, you know, just like who I am as a person. You know, and it's so funny though, because I really wanted to just get to be hands-on with the animals. My mother, you know, bless her heart, thankfully was honest with me and was like, listen, you ain't going to be spending much time with those animals if you're a veterinarian. You go in there, you find out what's wrong with them, and then you go on to the next one. And I was like, oh, that's not what I wanted to.
Did you ever imagine yourself, or did you ever have the dream of being a mother? And I say that because it's something I just thought about right now. Like, I don't think as a kid, I mean, I always thought about, okay, I want to have kids one day, but I never thought of I want to be a mother. I think that's two different things. Does that make sense to you?
No, it definitely does. And it's funny because I really did. I was just so happy because, you know, when it comes to playing house and all them things, you know, there's always the like, okay, and you're going to be the daddy. And you know, I always wanted to be the mom. And I always had this very strong desire to be a mom one day. You know, and I was very happy when I had my little baby dolls and all that stuff, and I got to pretend. And I have to be honest, it's not something that my parents or anybody like forced on me. I do know that's a big issue in, you know, communities of color, but I just really wanted to be able to have the opportunity to nurture and to, you know, not just love, but support, you know, a person in their upbringing, you know, that was, you know, if we're trying to like boil it down to what was it, that was, you know, really what it was for me as a kid. I loved the idea of being able to pour love and life and nurturing into, you know, my own baby. And it's funny because I know that's so strange to think about, like, you know, a child wanting to do that, right? And have that much intention about it. But I really did. And it's even funnier because I used to want to have 6 kids.
Ooh, girl.
That's why I'm laughing at myself, because I'm like, okay, we're not doing that.
This one baby I got, he a lot of work.
I definitely have, you know, revised my number as I've become an adult. but it is kind of funny because I really did always have that dream. And which is kind of funny for me because it's like, I know so many people who that is not the case. Did not have a dream of being a mom at that age. And it's not that they don't love it now, but it was definitely not something that was on, their list of dreams.
I can definitely, but it's funny. I think some people then they didn't even know they didn't even know that it would be something they love. I know for me too, it's like, it wasn't necessarily top of mind, right? Accidents happen sometimes, right? And you just fall into it and you find a gift that you didn't know within yourself. And I want to, and you talk about this in a lot of like your work and on your Instagram page. So that's why I'm going to ask you this, the influence of your father, right? And how he was somebody who nurtured gifts in you and helped you see this potential within yourself. How do you feel like that plays out into just how you approach, like looking at how you approach motherhood too?
It's so interesting because I do feel that a lot of how he showed up for me, I am already making an effort to show up for my child. And also the ways that he did not show up for me. I find myself stepping into, recognizing the duality, right, of what was brought in, but also what wasn't brought in when it comes to his efforts. And it's not to take away from anything that he did for me. My father really was just such a loving, caring father, and did the best that he could with what he had. You know what I mean? And I think that's something that happens with every generation, right? And it shows up differently. Our parents do the best with what they had, what they had come to learn, and things like that. And I feel like that's also part of what he gave to me, right, was the understanding that, listen, I'm doing the best that I can with what I have. And when it's your turn, you're going to do the same, but in your own way, right? And so I'm very big on, something my father always told me was, he was like, oh, when you were, a baby, I never did that baby talk. I always just talked to you like you were an adult. And that's why you were able to, speak so well, even at a young age. There's stories that he and my mother would both tell me about how when I was a toddler and I did not want to do something, I immediately was like, you're not the boss of me, because I had a very thorough explanation. Apparently, I was like, because apparently I said, you're not the boss of me, because I'm going to do what I want to do, because I have to deal with the consequences. And they both looked at me like, who is this child?
Yeah, maybe.
Like right? But they then, instead of just getting angry with me, they obviously had a little chuckle to themselves about like, oh Lord. But they also then had a conversation with me about, about like, yes, you make your own decisions and no one is the boss of you. But right now, your mommy and daddy have to guide you the best that we can and ensure that you're not doing things that put you in harm's way and that you're making the best decisions for yourself. Now, I definitely still do baby talk with my baby.
It's hard, especially when they're so young, right? You just automatically do it.
Yeah. Plus, also, like, let's be real. Babies be loving it. They be laughing. They be smiling. And I will do anything just to get a smile and a laugh out of my baby. But, there's also a piece of, I do speak to my child as if they were an adult, in a sense where I do have a conversation or a dialogue, right? Even where it's like just talking about like what we're doing or what we're about to do, right? So, I'll say like, okay, now we're going to change your diaper. First we have to take it off. Now we got to wipe you down. Now we're going to put your diaper back on. So I do things, I do take into account those things. And being that my baby is only, like 5 months old, there's only so much that I can really, do that encourages certain things. But my baby, for example, is definitely taken after me where clearly wants to skip crawling and wants to go straight to walking and wants to do everything early. And I can't help but laugh because I got a whole, when my baby was born, I had my astrologist do a whole birth chart of all the planetary placements. And I knew my baby, was in Aries and was going to have a, Libra moon and things like that. But because I knew what sign the moon was in when my baby was born. But there's a lot where I was able to recognize that my child was going to be somebody who took after me in certain ways and obviously takes after their father in certain ways. And it's important for me to embrace and honor that my child is still their own person, right? So I skipped crawling. I went straight to walking. My parents, were big on like, oh yeah, you crawled, I think, for maybe half a day and said, fuck this, and decided to stand up and start walking. And so I embraced that with my baby, right? So my baby is always wanting to stand and practice standing. So instead of trying to encourage and force crawling, we still do tummy time and all that stuff. I have helped to embrace that this is the pattern that my child wants to go through, right? The pattern of I'm making my own. And instead, I'll offer my hands and my child will use my hands to, pull himself up. And I think, that's kind of part of what my father had, really embedded in me is accepting that children are going to make their own route and make their own way with things, and to embrace that and support that best that we can, right? Especially having a fiery Aries as a Sagittarius, I really understand that, right? This desire to, I'm going to do things my way and I'm going to do things in my time. My baby is only 5 months and we got 2 teeth already. So,
what? Are you serious?
Yes, I'm dead serious, which is, not a usual thing. So I have really kind of had to surrender in that way and just embrace supporting that. My child is also very sensitive, emotionally and energetically. I can already see that. It's something that even came up in the birth chart, all kinds of things, where it's just very evident. And even when, let's say I'm uncomfortable in a social situation and my baby is present, whole mood shifts from being, for my baby, from being a happy, smiley baby to noticing mommy's uncomfortable and I'm not a fan. And we'll literally...
Isn't it crazy how our babies feel our energy and they know? And I breastfeed. I know. Do you breastfeed as well?
I do.
I think that's also a whole nother level of just that connection. Mm-hmm. They know.
Yeah. They know. They know what's up.
Yeah.
They know what's up. But supporting that, right? And having conversations with my partner as well about our baby is going to be very sensitive. And as you can see, even when I'm not feeling something, our baby picks up on it. And so we have to be good at supporting that, right? And helping our child to understand, that's not their responsibility to hold, right? It's not my child's responsibility to hold my emotions or my discomfort, but we shouldn't not honor that our child is able to feel these things and read these things. And that's also why we have to set an example of when we're uncomfortable, right? Whether it's I speak up or my partner speaks up, because, I think a lot of us understand that there's times with, just family in general, right? That we may be uncomfortable, especially as new parents, because, everybody got something to say.
Listen, the baby's too. My new thing now is everyone's trying to tell me he's too big for breast milk. It's not enough. It's not holding him anymore. I'm like, listen, y'all just. And I have Caribbean. My parents are Jamaican, right? So that's a whole nother level. The Caribbean,
yes, Caribbean parenting is a whole other level.
But something you were talking about, and I think this can really help us just talk about if we reflect on the pregnancy part of the pandemic. The idea of dismantling the playbook, right? Because I think the COVID-19 global pandemic really dismantled everyone's playbook, right? People realized what mattered, what didn't matter. Things that we thought had to be done one way can be done another way. Looking back at your pregnancy, what were some of the things that you really struggled with, or the things you had to dismantle about what you thought pregnancy would be like and what it actually was like for you? And we can make this a conversation. You can ask me things. Let's make this like really, really free flowing, because I would love to just hear like what were you going through during that time as well.
You know, as you mentioned before, pregnancy can be really isolating in its own way. But I found that during COVID, it was exceptionally isolating because, especially because a lot of my pregnancy, I was pregnant in, 2020 into 2021.
Okay.
But there was a good portion of it that was the, winter and fall, so I was not, and it was cold, you know what I mean? Like, so there was no really meeting outside with people. I didn't get to have an actual baby shower. I only was able to have, a small Zoom kind of thing. It was frustrating. And I think, it's not even just so much the baby shower part, more so the part about not being able to come together, not being able to see my friends, not being able to I don't want to say grieve, because I did not necessarily find that I was grieving or mourning the shift between not being a mom into becoming a mom, but it was more so about feeling like I wasn't able to honor the transition. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm sure you can relate. There was a piece of like, not feeling, for me especially, I didn't feel safe going and visiting people or going and having them visit me, with the COVID risk and things like that, and the rate at which so many women who were pregnant were ending up in the hospital or in the ICU because they got COVID while pregnant. It was really stressful for me and really disheartening that I didn't get to have that communal connection, right? That everybody being loved talks on, right? About.
Just that communal being loved on that you see, and that I'm realizing pregnant people need, right?
Yes. Like having your home, and I'm sure, you can really connect on this, like having those times like that you see in movies or you hear people talk about, right? Where a pregnant friend, either goes to visit their friend or their friend comes to visit them. I don't have no sisters, so my friends are my sisters kind of thing. Having them come and connecting and them getting to rub your belly, right? Or them getting to, do your hair for you because you're just too tired or your body just hurts so much to even lift your fucking arms up and do your hair, right?
Sitting down, getting up. It's like, once I'm sitting down, I'm not getting back up. Yeah.
Yeah, like all that stuff, just having your friends around you to love on you, you know what I mean? And support you. And like I said, honor the transition that you're experiencing from being somebody who wasn't a mom to becoming a mom, because there is a transition. And I do think we need to, that is something everybody should be honest with themselves about. But it's really difficult to honor that transition when we're in a pandemic and there were restrictions the way that there were, like, and I think everybody's going to handle these things differently. I'm sure, you had your own experience with them. I'm not sure how comfortable you were with going places without a mask during that time.
Oh no,
but I absolutely had no comfort. Yes, I was so anxious, like right?
Even like I didn't want to be the 1% chance that, okay, you do get it. And then something happens to the baby. It's like, how do you live with yourself? So there's this ongoing fear, shame, guilt, like, even hanging out with people when I did, I'll be honest, like there were some friends that I had in like my bubble that, in your little hang out with, but it's like, yo, what if one day, like, she didn't wash her hands and then she touched me. And then, it was just all these different levels of fear, but you didn't really want to tell people all the things that you were thinking about. Cause then they'll be like, girl, then we're not ever coming around. We don't want to put you at risk. But part of me, it's like, I was constantly trying to reflect, all right, how risky, and I'm saying that in quotes, right? Can I be? Like, even with going to the grocery store, my partner will always be like, oh, I'll go. I'm like, no, I want to get out the house. I remember one time I was in the Trader Joe's line, people when they had lines outside the store. And you couldn't tell that I was pregnant. So of course, I just stayed outside in the line, because now if you were pregnant, they let you go to the front of the line, you go in, right?
Yeah.
I just stood outside in the line, and I'm like, I'm pregnant to this random guy, this random old guy next to me. And he looked at me like, oh, okay. And it was just so random. And I don't know why I had to tell him that I was pregnant, but there were these moments for I guess, like you said, connecting that we just lost.
Mm-hmm.
And I think other people didn't want to be the person to, comment or to invade people's space. So I think it was a weird time. It was definitely
weird. It was definitely weird. And it's like, I really like hardly went anywhere. I didn't go to the grocery, and another thing that was really difficult, and I'm not sure what the protocol was for you, because I've noticed that like different places are having different protocols with this, but for the majority of my, like prenatal appointments,
oh yeah,
I had to go by myself. I had to see my baby on the, ultrasound by myself. I had to hear the heartbeats by myself for the first time, like all those things by myself for the first time, because my partner was not allowed in. And I totally understand, it's about prioritizing the, people who are pregnant, who are coming in, right, and who have a suppressed immune system, because I think that's what people forget a lot about this, about pregnancy, is your immune system is suppressed. Yeah. So you are immunocompromised during that time, which is why it can be so risky if you get COVID. And I totally understand that was their way, clinics' ways of reducing risk. It wasn't until I switched midwifery practices at the end, because I wanted to do a home birth, and the original one that I was with did not do home births. But they took my insurance, so I was trying to be with them for as long as I could. And so when I switched at the end, I finally was able to have people come with me. This other midwifery that I ended up with, they were open to having somebody accompany you, whether it was your partner or sometimes it was my mom. Everybody had to be masked up, but it was really nice to not have to do those parts alone. And I can imagine that, if somebody is listening to this and they have experienced being pregnant as a single parent, I can imagine that there's a piece of, frustration, right? That here I'm complaining about not getting to have my partner present, and it's just because of COVID, right? Whereas other people have not had partners present because their partners or who they got pregnant by is not showing up. And it's frustrating because like, that's fucked. That's messed up, right? You should be supported and have somebody with you, but it was really frustrating that I could not even have my mom come. And that was really difficult for me, especially because I had experienced a miscarriage the summer before. And so this was really kind of different for me, where I had the miscarriage by myself. My partner was on tour. My mom was out of the city. I was by myself when it happened. So it was really hard for me to have to then experience these good parts by myself, and also kind of go to them with that fear in the back of my head that I'm going to go to one of these appointments one day and I'm going to be by myself and there's going to be no heartbeat. Yeah. Like those were things that I was stressed and worried about. And I think that's also what was so difficult, about the way COVID has impacted things. And I chose a home birth because I don't do well in hospitals to begin with, but also when I was due, they were not allowing you to have more than one person present. And I really wanted my mom to be there. I also wanted my partner. I didn't want to have to choose, which is why I ended up doing a home birth, because then I got to choose who was there and I wouldn't have to be alone. So that was really great. But I think that's also really limiting too. Unfortunately, since I wasn't, doing a home birth, I had the option to decide like, okay, everybody else gonna be masked the fuck up, but I am not wearing a mask during birth because I couldn't do it.
I don't know how, I had so you had your baby at home. I had my baby in the hospital, but I had a natural birth in the hospital, and I didn't mask up. They did the COVID test beforehand, and so they didn't make me mask, but just that the whole process, I'm like, how could they really want women to be comfortable and it for the women who had to do it with their mask on, they are truly
Yo, shout outs to them. Shout outs to them for real. Because I could not. I have to give them that because I could not. I couldn't.
I couldn't either. You know what's funny for me? Now thinking about once our children came into this earth, right? Earthside. The biggest transition for me. So when I was in the hospital for 2 days, we couldn't leave the room, right?
Yeah.
So imagine your first 2 days. That was part of the whole pandemic. They wouldn't let you leave the room. Normally you can like go into the nursery, go into the atrium.
Mm-hmm.
I was in the room for the first 2 days, right? Of course I was resting and all this stuff, but it was the shock of, wait, now the baby's here. And now the baby is going to be part of this crazy system in this world, right? So that was a reality that I had like during the early days. What were some of the things that you were experiencing about how your postpartum experience was going to be different from what you thought?
You know, it's so interesting. I was both appreciative and also not. I was appreciative because it meant I had the perfect excuse as, you know, for if anybody was like, oh, wait, can I come see the baby? You know, I had the perfect excuse to be like, COVID, sorry. No, my midwives and the pediatrician said, no. Because as much as, you know, I wanted connection at that time, I did not want no visitors. I did not. I'll keep it 100. I didn't want anybody other than my mom or my partner around because I was so tired and I wanted to get to kind of just be in that bubble of just being with my baby, you know, and kind of in that like post, you know, you're finally here, you know, just kind of happiness. And I wanted to, you know, settle into somewhat of a routine, right? Find what is our routine going to be, you know, adjust to how my body feels after. Because I gained well over 40 pounds during my pregnancy, you know, and I wanted to feel like, okay, now how is my body responding to losing literally just the weight of the placenta of the baby, you know, extra fluid. But I also wanted to kind of like adjust to my postpartum body, you know, all of it, like literally how I'm feeling. And also with like the concerns about postpartum depression, right? And postpartum anxiety. I appreciated that I was able to not have to feel pressured about seeing people or people's comments or having to be around anybody that I didn't want to be around, but who I might have had to be around otherwise just due to courtesy and things. It was kind of nice, but at the same time, I was really sad that I could not really feel comfortable having any of my homegirls come see the baby, right? Or having any of my homegirls come help.
Right?
They're not. They're really not. And, you know, like because I had a doula and, you know, she offered me postpartum assistance if I had wanted it. But I didn't even feel fully comfortable with that because I just had so much anxiety about COVID and the baby that I was just like, no, I don't want anybody. I don't want anybody in here. I'm going to stay in my bubble. I don't want nobody here. It's all right. I got this. You know, because I was so anxious about COVID. And I mean, I still am. I'm not going to act like I'm not. I'm still very anxious, especially with this Delta variant. You know, about my baby getting COVID. It really stresses me out. You know, but like I said, with that initial postpartum piece, it was really nice to be able to have that excuse because, you know, people be wanting to come see the baby when the baby just out. And it's like,
and they want to kiss your baby, like, keep your lips to yourself.
Yes.
You know, even if your
it's
family,
like, yo.
I think also...
No, I don't care if they family. It's not okay. Germs are real. When COVID is not a thing. Germs are real. Okay. I don't know where your mouth is. I don't want to know.
I think for me too, it made me realize just not saying how many things we could have said no to before that that COVID, the pandemic, I think gave people, what's the word? Like we should have been felt
permission.
comfortable. You get what I'm saying? Like, if you wanted to be alone, and I think also for the flip side of it is, I think some mothers, a lot of the new moms, there were a lot of pandemic babies in my circle. I had a lot of friends who had babies.
Yes.
I think the connection with their child was something that was a deeper connection, like because they got to spend so much time, whereas maybe they would have had to go on back to work sooner, right? It made me realize that the way our society is set up is it was never set up for that mother-child connection, because we live in a capitalist society, right? Where you have the baby, you get your 12 weeks, you go back to work, hustle, hustle, hustle. I think one thing that the pandemic made us realize is what's important, and that time with yourself, that time with your child in those early days, that's what really matters. And that's what really helps you build your confidence in a way as a mother, because a lot of moms that I know, they were doing it by themselves in the sense of not having a lot of support, but it also built in them this strength. I'm not saying that it's good always to have to do things by yourself. But you really do learn, like, yo, I have a lot of power that I didn't know I had. Or I can put my mind to do something, because the baby got to live, right? Like, your baby got to survive. And that was something for me that I think I personally realized is, wait, like, I would have had so much support, but this time I didn't, but I made it through. And I was proud of myself for that. Or I found the resources, like even just finding out things on your own and doing the research and understanding things a lot better, like breastfeeding. I'm like, listen, babe, you gonna get this breastfeeding thing, all right? And I think a lot of people were figuring it out and figuring themselves out during this pandemic, if that makes sense. Now that you said that your child is, your baby is 5 months, right? How has motherhood, we didn't even get to talk about just you, the work that you do. How do you think motherhood is now transforming your approach to your work, your professional work, and how you see life now?
I would have to say that it has definitely shifted my priorities in certain ways. I've always prioritized doing my best to have a balance when it comes to the work that I do. But now having a baby, I've really prioritized being present for my baby, and, doing what I can to spend as much time with my baby as I can. Fortunately my work is remote and things like that, but I really put off going back to one-on-one work for quite some time. I had originally intended not to do one-on-one work for longer than I'm actually going to be doing. But I found a way to just, orchestrate it around nap time, where the time that I am doing it is only going to be, once a day, 4 days a week. And I'm going to be doing it during one nap, because I want to be able to be with my baby. When my baby wakes up, I don't want to miss out on things. It's kind of prioritized my time in a way as far as how I show up and how I'm present. I've been enjoying motherhood so much, especially, that I've wanted to prioritize the whole, work smarter, not harder aspect.
Yep.
And I really have given a lot, right? Even, just on social media for years. I've been giving free content and free shit for years, offering that nurturing kind of through that. But now I'm in a space where it's I have to prioritize my nurturing for my baby. And there's only so many people who I can show up for fully and still have for my baby, because my baby is my priority. And so it's shifted around how I show up. And even with creating content, as much as there's things that I would love to do, it's, as far as my time goal, I don't have the same amount of time to continuously, constantly give free content. I don't have the time. And I also don't always necessarily have the energy. And I'm okay with that. It's really changed my need internally to show up, in ways that like are just not sustainable.
I was going to ask you about that. Do you ever feel like social media puts this pressure, especially because you were sharing parts of your experience and your journey with your followers? Do you feel like they expected you to continue to perform at, or to release content at the same level that you were doing it before?
Oh, absolutely. It's interesting. Like I've had so many people say like, you're enjoying motherhood, but I really do miss your videos, or I really miss that, and I understand the sentiment and I don't knock it. But there's also a piece of me that's kind of like, it feels as though there's just this emphasis on consumption, and I'm not here to be consumed. I'm a person. All need to learn. It's not just me, all of us, right? But capitalism teaches us the opposite of that. And that's something that really has just become so like in my face, where people really, some people are bothered that I'm not sharing the way that I used to. Some people are like, we know that whenever you can, you give. And, it's interesting because for me, all these years that I've been giving this content, not just about myself and my own journey, but to uplift and reinforce self-worth in others and things like that, people are still not recognizing that just like they deserve to not be consumed and they deserve to be able to manage their time how they feel and show up how they feel that they can in a sustainable way, there are still people who would rather do the opposite with me and not respect that, or not respect my boundaries, because that's been another thing. I've been talking about boundaries for years, and people will still be bothered that I myself am setting boundaries, especially even during my pregnancy. People were so mad when I did not want their unsolicited advice. So angry. So angry.
Like really angry? Like legit angry?
Like, yes, legit angry. I've had people block me because but first they would send a nasty ass message and then they'd block me, and the thing is, I wasn't disrespectful. There was a point that part of me was like, something, I got raging ass hormones and I am being more respectful about this than y'all. Okay. There's a problem here. But I would do my best to be diplomatic. But, I even had people who were quote unquote professionals breaching ethics by trying to give me unsolicited, even medical advice, related to nausea things. And I said to a couple of them, you do know that you're breaching ethics by reaching out to somebody on social media who you don't know. You don't have my full medical history. You don't know what I'm allergic to. You don't know what I'm currently doing or have tried. And yet here you are telling me to do this. And half the time I would say to them, because it was true, you do know I already tried this, right? Oh, you don't know. So I don't know why you're suggesting anything right now. I did not ask. I did not solicit your advice. I did not say, does anybody have any tips or suggestions for a reason? And then I would get blocked, which was always very funny to me because I'm like,
why are they blocking you? You should have blocked them.
That's what I'm saying. So at a point I did start just blocking people because it really was disrespectful. Even with like stuff about, I know everybody's different about gender, but I personally did not feel comfortable with people I did not know speculating on basically what my child's genitals were. I did not like that. It made me feel very uncomfortable. And like I said, I know everybody's different with this stuff, but it just made me feel very uncomfortable that people I did not know were speculating based on where my belly was or how I was feeling or any of these things that my child was going to be X or Y or whatever. And it's like, it's just very strange to me. Why are y'all making bets on what's going to be between my child's legs when really that's all they're guessing? Because my child's gender could be something completely different, right? Gender is not always what is between your legs. That's, whatever. It can be your assigned sex at birth, but it just was very strange to me. And when I would say, like, I was very clear where I said, listen, like, I'm really not open for people discussing or trying to say what my child is. I don't feel comfortable with this. I don't feel comfortable with everybody speculating basically about my child's genitals. Like, please don't do that. Especially as somebody who works in childcare, there's just this thing. It has always made me uncomfortable that people focus on that, because generally when people are focusing on that, it's not for the right reasons. And that's something I'm very protective of my child. And so even when I set those boundaries, people were upset. They were like, oh, you could say what you want, girl, but that's definitely a da-da-da. I'm like, you're completely
people
missing
are so
the
bold.
point.
Social media makes people so bold, right? And
they are. And it's just like, why? Like, why is this necessary is my thing,
and it's like, because you are, I would say, and I'm saying this in quotes, right? You are somebody who is an influencer in the level, just talking about the amount of followers. Mm-hmm. People just think that like your life is now theirs and you shouldn't have those boundaries. And even in the pandemic, I think people were looking even more, okay, what is she sharing? What is this? How is she doing this? And I'm happy that you were able to uphold your boundaries and provide and protect your space, because as you know, pregnancy is sacred. And there's so many things that we're dealing with that if you hadn't done it, people should have said thank you for even sharing, right? Because you could have just done one of those pop up with the
baby reviews.
Yes. Like, wait, whose kid is that? That's your niece? No, that's mine. We didn't really get to talk about your work and what the dream is for you now, right? Mm-hmm. But how do you think, we talked about you as a kid, how you saw the world, you saw all these strong women, you wanted to be a vet. That was the early dream. Now you have a child, you are involved in work, right? It's like, how do you see your life? How do you see the dream moving forward now that you have a child in the backseat, right? You're dream driving, you're not dream driving alone anymore. You have a child with you on this journey called life. Has the dream changed for you now?
So in the past 2 years, my work has been really a focus on one-on-one, healing work, whether that be through past life regression, inner child work, Reiki and energy work, or, doing readings and spiritual advisory, which anybody who's had a session with me in that capacity knows I give homework and all this other stuff. That was my focus for years, and offering what I could on social media for inspirational, and educational content, both related to mental health, spirituality, and like I said, just motivational in life. I'm definitely redirecting from one-on-one work to other types of offerings, such as, I do want to get back to writing. Prior to all this, I had also been a writer. I did some self-publishing kind of stuff. But I want to get back to writing and offering in that way, so that people can access my work through that consistently and on their time, and in a way that is also still allowing me to have the time that I need to show up as being a mom. But that's really, or even doing like audio work is something I've been interested in, whether it be like, recording affirmations and stuff like that people can listen to.
I love your reels, the recent reels that you did with the voiceover and the video of you with your baby. I love those.
I appreciate really that. So it's even stuff like that. I'm definitely redirecting in that way, because as much as I love one-on-one work, it takes so much out of me. And I don't think people realize that when it comes to spiritual work and healing work, regardless of how much grounding you do and just things like that, it takes a lot, and I want to be able to show up and be present for my baby so much, because one thing, kind of circling back to what how my dad showed up and didn't show up for me, there was a period of time where I really did not get to see him the way that I should have because of work. And that's thing I don't want to fall into. I still want to be able to provide, and I always will. Fortunately, between my ancestors and Creator, that they always provide a way, and I'm forever thankful and blessed in that way. But I don't want to constantly be working. I don't want to be, I know everybody's like, oh, I'm booked and busy. That's great. I don't want to be. I don't want to be busy. I want to have time. I want to have time to show up for my baby and to be able to experience and enjoy that and slow down in that way, but still provide in the ways that I need to. But it has absolutely changed how I hustle. Before I was totally okay with always grinding, and then just making time for rest. But I don't just want to have time for rest. I want to have time to be present for my baby. I want to have time to enjoy, all the experiences that are going to come from that. But I do still want to be able to offer what I can to others and continue to help others. So the trade-off is going to be more so, doing things that are accessible in different ways, such as, audio work, whether it's, making a little project of affirmations that people can play, play at their leisure, or, writing a book that somebody can access on their time, those kinds of things, because, I don't really see capitalism going anywhere as much as it would be nice.
It's not, girl. It is not.
It would be nice if it did, but it won't. I still got to provide, but I'm kind of over feeding into things in a way that is not sustainable for me, and in a way where I'm going to miss out, or my baby is going to feel that I'm missing out. I don't want my kids to feel the way that I did. I knew that my father was working for an important reason, but at the same time, I really missed him, and I have memories of calling him at work, or my mother trying to orchestrate, like, okay, after dinner, you and him are going to have a nightly phone call at least, and you can tell him about your day and say goodnight. And majority of the time, those didn't happen. And that was really hard for me as a kid. And I don't want my kid to have that experience of feeling that way for whatever reason, right? Me not showing up for my baby, and not being present. And later on saying, it's because I was working. It's because I had to pay these bills, and I had to pay this, and I had to pay that. I just have to figure out a different way to pay those bills, right? And provide, but also have time, and to be available so that my child has access, because it's great that other people are going to have access to me. Like I said, I really love to help others, but my child needs access to me too, and so do I.
And that's what I've learned now as a mother, is just how important this role is, right? And how you said when you were a kid, and I said, I want to bring this full circle, right? And you saw all those strong women and what they were able to do and what they were able to accomplish and just how they lived. And now your child is looking up to you, even at this young age, right? You're going to be an influence to your child in some way, right? And I get so excited whenever I think about what will Axel think about me when he's 18. He better say my mom was.
Girl, you already
bad.
know he's gonna say you popping. He gonna be like, "Yo, my mom was popping."
Yes, and it's funny too. One of my friends said, "If there's one thing, Raina, about your son, he is going to have the best self-esteem, because I'm always hyping him up. I'm like, yeah, you got it, right?" And I'm just so. That's what excites me about motherhood. And I think through the pandemic, we made it through. We're still making it through. But these babies, they are going to be, I think this generation is going to be different, just because we are so intentional with how we are mothering our children. And, I'm excited. Maybe they'll be friends, 20 years from now. Like, remember that podcast our moms had? So, thank you so much, Emilia, for coming on the show, sharing your journey. I think this is one that this conversation could be had so many times, so many different answers, and how people respond to questions. And it's important. Have the conversations, people. If you're listening, if you're a pregnant mom, if you've had a baby, it's your first time, do not feel alone. Try to find someone to talk it through, because sometimes you just need to know that you're not alone. You're not crazy. We've all gone through it. And motherhood is definitely a new territory, but it's a name we'll have forever.
No,
so.
That's facts. Thank you so much for having me and, creating this space and holding space for these conversations and creating this space. I think that, this is just so important. I know some people would say now more than ever. I think these conversations always needed to be had. But I think that you creating a space where they're easily accessible, no matter where you are during these times, is just so important and so crucial. And I really hope that anybody who listens in, like you said, realizes like you're not alone. And to definitely, as Raina said, tap in, connect with who you can. It's so crucial, because sometimes that community really can, even if it's just a phone call, can be so helpful.
Definitely. And lastly, Emilia, can you tell our dream drivers where they can connect with you online, and tune into your journey?
Yes. So you can catch me on Instagram. My, social handle is at ethereal.1 or ethereal.1, whichever, you want to interpret it as. See, that's how a little writing was in my history, did a little double entendre. But you can catch me there. And I share anything that I'm doing on there. So yeah.
Thank you so much. This was such a pleasure. And our dream drivers, I know they will have enjoyed this as much
I hope
as I
so.
You know so, girl. You know so.
Me.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I'm sorry we went over an hour a little bit, but this conversation was so needed, and it's so refreshing. And I love the work that you're doing. Continue to do it, and know that people like me are tuning in and need to see those affirmations, or just need to see that it's not always picture perfect, right? That's the thing that I think people need to realize. Like, motherhood isn't picture perfect, but that feeling, it's like, I know everyone experiences motherhood different, but there is really something about just seeing your child grow that does something to you.
Yes, it's so true. And it goes by quick, I gotta say. Like, if only pregnancy went by that quick. So that is something to keep in mind. If you're currently pregnant, please know it may feel like forever, but once that baby is out, it really does go by so quick. I know it sounds cliche, but it really does go by so quick. So
document it. I tell people, take videos, take all the pictures you want. Don't let anyone tell you take too many pictures.
There's no such thing.
All right. All right, so that's a wrap for episode 278 with Emilia. I hope you enjoyed hearing her dream driving journey and what it is like being a first-time mother during a global pandemic. We talked about a lot in this episode, so I just want to say thank you, Emilia, so much again for being so honest, being so vulnerable, being so transparent about your journey. I hope that you inspire someone listening in to not give up on themselves and to really embrace where we are in life and just where this season is taking us. Be true to who you are. Be true to all that your body is telling you, you're feeling, your child is telling you, your child is teaching you. Stay empowered, stay on this road, and know that, if your dream has shifted as you've navigated into motherhood, or maybe whatever this episode really piqued in you, whatever it really triggered in you, I really hope that you sit with it and that you're able to navigate. And remember, if you guys think this is going to be helpful for somebody else, or if you really enjoyed this episode and love what Emilia had to say, you can always share, post to your Instagram stories, post to Facebook, LinkedIn, wherever, and make sure you're tagging us. You can find us across the board on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Dreams and Drive. And if you want to sign up for our weekly email newsletter blast, The Keys, just go to dreamsanddrive.com/join. That's dreamsanddrive.com/join. I love hearing from you guys. And next week's episode is going to be a solo episode, right? And I'm trying to get on a cadence where you're getting a solo episode once a month. So please hold me to that. Remember that I'm always here for feedback. just an email away, just a DM away. I love hearing from you guys. So if you made it to this part of the episode, that means you really, really enjoyed it. So if you're new and you're not already subscribed, make sure you go and hit that subscribe button wherever you're listening so that you get notifications every time we have a new episode. Keep dreaming, keep driving, and we'll chat again in episode 279. Bye, guys.